everyone. My name is Sophia, and welcome to the Daily Arctic News 7 o'clock report. Today, we are reporting live about an incident that occurred last night. A viral video going online of a polar bear found digging through garbage in someone's backyard. Crazy, right? We almost never get to see a polar bear during our lifetime as they are inhabited at the ice-covered Arctic Ocean, which is much farther than the backyard in town. However, as climate change continues to increase Earth's temperature and accelerate sea ice melting, this causes glacier melting and ice shrinking, thus destroying their beloved habitats. NASA has reported that the Arctic sea ice area has decreased by an average of at least 13.1% every 10 years between 1981 and 2010. Arctic sea ice reaches its minimum in September every year, which is when this video is taking place. In September, Arctic sea ice now shrinks at a rate of 12.6% per decade. Additionally, as ice sheets and glaciers melt, water pours into the ocean, raising the sea levels. Flooding, habitat degradation, and other issues may result from this. And even at the top of the food chain, where polar bears are, they are susceptible. Polar bears are either detouring or swimming in the water to hunt for their food, as the ice is getting too thin to sustain their weight. Hence why we are seeing more polar bears digging through garbages in our backyards. And finally, I would like to switch over to Haman, who is currently live at the scene to report more details about the situation.
Thanks, Sophia. My name is Hamim, and I'm currently reporting live from where we unfortunately saw polar bears rummaging through the garbages of locals.
To continue what Sophia previously mentioned, polar bears have also started to forage more frequently in parts of the Arctic Circle where people have established. Polar bears are finding it more and more difficult to locate food in their native environment in the same manner they used to, and it is believed that the melting sea ice is a contributing reason for this. Polar bears are spending more time on land, which is leading to an increase in bear-to-human conflict.
Arctic terrestrials warming is equivalent to a 25% increase in the world's CO2 emissions, calculated by Peter Wadhams, who is a current professor of ocean physics at the Cambridge University. This means that the albedo effect might increase total global warming of CO2 by as much as 50%.
Water vapor concentration has increased by more than 20%, contributing to Arctic warming, as air temperatures in several areas of the Arctic have increased by several degrees Fahrenheit in recent decades.
Sea ice has receded from the shelves, allowing the water temperatures to reach into the high 30s.
The offshore permafrost, which has been frozen since the last ice age, is thawed by the warmer water that reaches the seabed.
It is covered by a thick layer of silt, which is rich in methane hydrates. Methane hydrates is a solid form of methane surrounded by ice.
Thanks, Sophia. My name is Igor, a journalist from Daily Arctic News, and we're here in the work studio of scientists Dr. T and Dr. Z to discuss polar bears. They really need our help. Their habitat is changing rapidly.
Actually, we have been talking about polar bears and their threats for quite a few years. I'm still curious about what are the biggest threats to polar bears within the last few years.
Last year, I worked on a circumpolar action plan with a team of graduate students. We identified 7 major threats as currently affecting or likely to affect the polar bear and its habitat. Climate change, human-caused mortality, mineral and energy resource exploration and development, contaminants and pollution, shipping, tourism-related activities, and diseases and parasites. I list them from highest to lowest according to the estimated level of threat. As we all know, climate change is not only the most serious long-term threat to polar bears and their habitat, but also to humans. The Arctic bears the brunt of the consequences of climate change. Polar bears require sea ice to perform many life functions, including traveling, hunting, resting, and mating. Even they at the top of the food chain are affected by melting sea ice in their physiology, which includes temperature, water availability, and carbon dioxide. Fewer feeding opportunities, fewer counts, and habitat fragmentation are all caused by climate change. They are forced to spend longer periods of the summer open water season along Arctic coastlines as Arctic sea ice sinks and retreats. You may have heard about conflict between humans and polar bears. As powerful predators, polar bears pose a significant threat to human life and property. Also, some indirect negative effects happen, like increased human interaction, vulnerability to pollutants and disease transmission.
So the polar bears are still facing the threats of climate change, but the warming climate hasn't eradicated the winter altogether. Can you briefly explain why the polar bears are resistant to the freezing?
I would say their specialized skin, muscle, blood, and nerve cells contribute. On top of that, polar bears have a thick, translucent fur coat that keeps them warm in the cold and blends them in with ice and snow. Just like humans, they have a closed circulatory system. Hence, their blood never leaves their arteries, veins, and capillaries. Their blood cells are adapted to hold more oxygen as they require to swim under freezing water for long periods of time, and are detailed to accommodate more blood during these temperatures. There are two types of blood cells, white and red, commonly lack of a nucleus and carry oxygen. White cells are essential for a quick healing process, which is ideal under such frigid temperatures.
Yeah, as Dr. T has mentioned, the cells and organ systems of the polar bears cooperate with each other to keep them warm in the cold and thus survive in the Arctic. So do polar bears have other methods to regulate their body temperature, like by the physiological process?
Polar bears maintain high body temperatures, maintain high metabolic rates, and produce a lot of heat. Due to this, they can survive in the Arctic at temperatures as 100 degrees. Polar bears lose a lot of heat through rest, breathing, and exercise. As their core temperature rises above their set point, polar bears regulate their heat gain primarily by panting. To prevent heat loss, polar bears increase the thickness of their insulation when the temperature drops below their set point. In order to stay warm, they have thick fur and a thick layer of fat. It is possible for polar bears to generate more heat by non-shearing if the insulation is adequate. Instead of converting food into energy, they turn it into heat.
Well, we have been talking so much about how the polar bears adapt to the current climate. Then what is the main effect on polar bears due to the climate change?
Climate change affects temperature, water availability, and carbon dioxide, resulting in changes to the physiological levels of polar bears. The effect of temperature is what I mentioned before. In addition, the greenhouse effect produces large amounts of carbon dioxide, and the carbon dioxide causes ice to melt. In this case, the lack of ice will leave the polar bears with less water and food supply while losing their habitat.
As you said, the climate change has brought some repercussions to polar bears. The melting ice caused the polar bears to have smaller habitat to live on. So what is the status of polar bears' population today?
Global warming has profoundly negative implications for the future growth rate of polar bears. The reduction of ice will lead to less prey and polar bears will have to migrate further away, which will eventually lead to the risk of starvation and other accidents. In response to global warming, polar bears will move to higher ground. Nonetheless, polar bears are also adapting to global warming, and their functional traits that affect survival will adjust according to behavioral plus plasticity, ecosystem productivity, and migration. Climate change is likely to affect polar bear community structure, which will lead to the decline or extinction of some polar bear populations. Changes in temperature will cause populations to separate into several distinct and isolated groups. In addition, warming will lead to higher decomposition rates in cold climate ecosystems and lower decomposition rates in warm climate ecosystems.
Is there anything else that people can do?
From fundraising for environmental charities to reducing your carbon footprint, there are many things you can do to help protect polar bears. You can help combat climate change by making your daily commute more environmentally friendly and reducing your consumption of animal products. I recommend that you go to the website of Polar Bears International, the world's leading polar bear conservation organization, where you can donate to help protect polar bears and their habitat, as well as the climate that has allowed humans to thrive. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. T and Dr. Z. I really appreciate your sharing. It's a great experience to understand why climate change is so important to polar bears, like how the sea waters melt affect them so much. It helps to learn all about the polar bears and how the whole ecosystem works. It's not just for the polar bears, it also brings some negative effects to human beings of real lives. This really made me realize how urgent the situation is. And I'm so happy to be here to do the interview and bring it to the world to see. Hope everyone can join in and do whatever you can to help to save the polar bears, which in return is saving us as people as well. Thanks for the privilege of your time and good night.